The dream of the neighborhood laundromat is simple. Buy 30 industrial machines, lock the doors, and watch cash pile up while you sleep. On paper, it is the ultimate cash cow. Zero inventory, 95% gross margins, and immediate cash on delivery collection. No accounts receivable, no bad debt. But behind the hum of the spin cycle lies a brutal operational reality. A laundromat is not actually a real estate or service business. It is a highly volatile utility arbitrage machine. You buy industrial electricity, natural gas, and clean water at commercial scale, and try to retail it to consumers at a premium. When energy and occupancy costs spike, your spread vanishes. Almost none of that passive income dream is true. To understand why, we have to look at how a high-paid tech lead fell into the ultimate urban cash flow trap. Conversionally, meet David. He's a senior software engineer and tech lead living in Austin, Texas. By all conventional standards, he's made it. He commands a multiple six-figure salary, leads a highly capable engineering team, and has built a solid $300,000 cash reserve. But behind the screen, David is exhausted. The constant cycle of 2-week sprints, midnight system critical alerts, and endless corporate restructuring have left him feeling like a highly paid cog in a massive machine. He wants out. He wants sovereignty, a tangible business he can own, and a reliable stream of cash flow that doesn't depend on 40 hours of weekly meetings. That's when the algorithm finds him. Like many high-earning professionals looking for an exit strategy, David is targeted by content promoting the ultimate middle-class dream, the self-serve laundromat. The pitch is incredibly seductive. You buy an established shop, install some card readers, and let the machines do the work. The customers bring their own clothes, load them into your steel drums, and pay you up front. On paper, the gross margins are staggering, often exceeding 80%. After all, the raw cost of water and electricity per cycle seems almost negligible compared to the price of a wash. To an analytical mind like David's, it looks like a simple engineering problem with an incredibly high yield. Hopefully, he calculates that a modest 50-machine setup could easily replace his base salary within a few years, allowing him to transition from writing code to managing a passive cash-generating asset. But this is where the financial illusion ends and the operational audit begins. What the gurus and brokers present as gross margin is merely the sticker price of a highly deceptive business model. They show you the top-line revenue and the minor cost of detergent while completely ignoring the brutal reality of capital depreciation, lease structures, and the massive fixed costs required to keep the lights on. They sell you a dream of passive cash, but they hide the true cost of entry. When David signed his first lease in the heart of a major metro district, he did not realize he was entering a financial meat grinder designed to extract every single penny of his tech salary. To understand how this dream falls apart, we have to look at what happened when David transitioned from his tech office to the physical reality of retail real estate. He chose a highly populated, dense urban corridor in the heart of the city, believing that foot traffic and sheer population density would guarantee a steady stream of customers. He signed a lease for 2,000 square feet of commercial space, confident that the location would secure his financial freedom. But the reality of high-friction metro commercial real estate is a brutal teacher. David was immediately hit by the reality of triple net lease structures. His basic rent wasn't just a flat fee. He was paying a base rent of $120 per square foot. On top of that base rent, the landlord added floating common area maintenance, property taxes, and building insurance. In a dense metropolitan area, these shared building expenses are highly volatile. When the city reassessed property taxes, or when the building required central HVAC repairs, those costs were passed directly to David. His monthly overhead ballooned before he even turned on a single washing machine. This is the reality of fixed cost rigidity. every single month. Regardless of whether David had 10 customers or 10,000, he had to clear a massive financial hurdle just to break even. To fund the acquisition of his 30 commercial-grade washers and stack dryers, David had taken out a standard small business administration loan. He was confident his high-tech salary would act as a safety net, but the monthly debt service on those machines added another major fixed obligation to his balance sheet. Unlike software, physical machinery represents rapid capital depreciation. The moment those industrial dryers started running, they began to wear down. But the debt service remained completely fixed, demanding payment every 30 days without fail. The next trap was invisible until the doors actually opened, and it came in the form of cashless payment processing. In this modern urban district, customers don't carry quarters. They don't even carry cash. Every single transaction at David's Laundromat was executed via credit cards, Apple Pay, or mobile apps. The payment processor charged a standard fee of 3.5% plus 30 cents per transaction. This flat fee is a minor annoyance on a $100 purchase, but on a $5 wash cycle, that 30-cent flat fee combined with the percentage cut eats up nearly 10% of the total transaction value. Every time a customer swiped to start a machine, the payment processor extracted a massive portion of David's margin. He was not just running a laundromat, he was funding the transaction fees of major financial networks. The final blow to David's urban experiment was spatial friction. Because his shop was located in a dense downtown block, there was absolutely no dedicated parking. Customers had to search for street parking, navigate aggressive municipal parking enforcement, or carry heavy laundry bags across multiple busy intersections. This friction completely altered customer behavior. The customers who did use his shop were hyper-rushed. They wanted to get in, wash their items, and get out as fast as possible. There was no opportunity for frictionless consumerism. David could not upsell premium wash packages, he had no room to offer wash and fold services, and there was no physical space to set up vending machines for detergent or snacks. His average ticket size stayed locked at the bare minimum. He was trapped in a high overhead, low margin cycle where his location actually worked against his capacity utilization rate. As David watched his cash reserves melt away, another operator took the exact same $300,000 and built a cash fortress by changing just one macro variable: geography. What if we changed the geography entirely? Let us look at what happens when you strip away the suffocating constraints of a hyper-dense metropolitan center and move the exact same business model to a strategic yield corridor. Imagine David packing up his ambitions and relocating to an emerging suburban corridor just outside of Houston, Texas. Here, the entire financial architecture of his business undergoes a profound structural transformation. In this environment, the real estate landscape is completely different. David is no longer staring at a base rent of $120 per square foot. Instead, he secures a spacious 3,000 square foot standalone retail space for just $25 per square foot. The lease agreement is clean, and the common area maintenance fees are stable and predictable, not subject to the erratic property tax spikes of a dense downtown core. This massive reduction in fixed overhead fundamentally lowers his break-even point. It removes the constant suffocating weight of fixed cost rigidity, giving the business room to breathe even during slow weeks. With this abundance of space, David can completely eliminate the spatial friction that choked his previous location. He designs a frictionless layout. Outside, there's a dedicated parking lot with 25 free spaces, allowing customers to park directly in front of the entrance. This eliminates the physical effort of hauling heavy laundry bags across busy city streets. But the real unlock is how David capitalizes on local traffic patterns. Documentary narrator. His new location sits on a high-volume suburban commuter route with an annual average daily traffic count of 30,000 vehicles. More importantly, the speed limit on this stretch of road is 30 miles per hour. At this speed, drivers have a clear, unhurried line of sight to his storefront, and making a quick turn into the parking lot requires zero split-second decision-making. The low speed and high volume create a natural flow of high-intent customers who can easily integrate a laundry run into their daily commute. This frictionless design completely shifts consumer psychology. Customers are no longer rushed or stressed by parking enforcement. Customers step inside a bright, wide-open space with comfortable seating, workspaces, and high-speed internet. Because they feel relaxed, they stay longer, which opens up massive opportunities for higher-margin services. David introduces a premium wash and fold service. Busy families can drive up, drop off their laundry at a dedicated drive-through window, and pick it up folded and packaged the next day. This service alone immediately triples his average ticket size, converting a basic $5 self-serve wash into a $45 high-margin transaction. Furthermore, David tackles the industry's biggest profit killer, low capacity utilization rates during off-peak hours. Instead of waiting for retail customers to walk in, he leverages his industrial capacity to sign B2B service contracts. He approaches local boutique gyms, spas, and small restaurants, offering to process their towels and linens overnight. By running these commercial loads between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., David drives his overall capacity rate up to 80%. He is now extracting revenue from his expensive machinery 24 hours a day, turning what was once dead nighttime overhead into a highly profitable, highly automated operation. By reducing physical and operational friction, David has built a true cash-generating asset that thrives on natural local traffic and optimized utility usage. But to truly think like an asset owner, we must understand that this small-scale struggle is actually a micro-mirror of how multi-billion-dollar giants collapse under the exact same weight. Documentary narrator. To understand why a simple business like David's Laundromat is so vulnerable, we have to look past the small storefronts and examine the largest boardrooms in the world. The challenges David faced with high fixed costs, rising energy prices, and rigid debt structures are not unique to neighborhood laundromats. They are the exact same economic forces that destroy multi-billion-dollar corporate empires. This is where we transition from microfinance to the ruthless arena of macro asset management. Every business, regardless of scale, is governed by the same laws of physics regarding cash flow. When we analyze corporate collapses under financial forensics, the primary cause of death is rarely a sudden drop in customer demand. It is almost always a structural mismatch in the capital stack. In the corporate world, this is known as an asset-liability mismatch. It occurs when a business funds short-term, rapidly depreciating assets with rigid, long-term liabilities. Consider the sudden collapse of Higher Ground Education, which filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Higher Ground was the largest Montessori school operator in the United States, managing hundreds of premium early childhood centers. On paper, the model looked magnificent. They acquired localized, high-demand preschools, standardized the operations, and projected massive recurring tuition revenues. Understated, it was the ultimate roll-up strategy, highly favored by private equity investors. But underneath the premium branding lay a fatal structural flaw. To fund their aggressive expansion, Higher Ground relied heavily on floating rate debt and expensive commercial leases. They leased premium urban real estate with high base rents and annual escalation clauses. At the same time, their primary asset, the student enrollment and tuition cash flow, was highly volatile and sensitive to regional economic shifts. When inflation drove up teacher wages and energy costs, the operational expenses of running these centers surged. Because the company was carrying a massive debt load with fluctuating interest rates, their debt service payments skyrocketed. They had built an extreme level of fixed cost rigidity into a business that relied on variable consumer demand. When tuition revenue dipped slightly in key urban markets, the cash flow could no longer cover the fixed lease obligations and debt payments. The entire multi-state network collapsed into insolvency because they tried to scale a high-friction, asset-heavy model using cheap debt that suddenly became incredibly expensive. This is the exact same trap David faced in his first urban laundromat. David used an SBA loan with a variable interest rate to purchase industrial washers and dryers. These machines are depreciating assets with a finite operational lifespan, usually 7 to 10 years. Yet his debt service was locked in for a decade, and his interest payments fluctuated with macroeconomic rate hikes. He was trying to service a high, unpredictable debt load using $5 transactions that were constantly being eaten alive by rising utility bills and merchant swipe fees. The danger multiplies exponentially when major private equity firms attempt roll-ups in highly fragmented, localized service industries. In recent years, Wall Street investors have targeted everyday businesses like car washes, HVAC repair services, and, yes, neighborhood laundromats. The thesis is simple. Buy 50 individual family-owned shops, centralize the back-office administration, cut redundant labor, and package them into a single, massive corporate portfolio to sell at a premium valuation. But these Wall Street analysts often fail to calculate the sheer weight of localized operational friction. Dry tone: when you consolidate 50 individual laundromats, you do not achieve true economies of scale because the physical constraints of each location remain completely local. Scoffs: you cannot ship water or natural gas from a cheaper state to an expensive urban center. A pipe leak in Chicago cannot be fixed by a centralized customer service team in New York. Serious: instead, the roll-up strategy actually increases fixed cost rigidity. Frustrated: corporate overhead is added on top of already thin local operating margins. Tense: the localized leases, each with different landlords, base rents, and triple net escalations, remain as rigid as ever. Worried: when a macroeconomic shock occurs, such as a sharp spike in natural gas prices or a sudden shift in local minimum wage laws, the entire consolidated portfolio begins to bleed cash. Understated: the individual store owner can survive a bad quarter by working the register themselves or deferring minor maintenance. Firmly, a heavily leveraged corporate entity owned by private equity does not have that flexibility. Their debt covenants require strict cash flow ratios every single month. Dramatic reveal: when the cash flow across 50 locations drops by even 10%, the interest coverage ratio is breached, triggering a rapid and catastrophic default. This brings us to a fundamental law of asset ownership. Scaling up an inefficient, high-friction business model does not make it more stable. It only makes the eventual collapse larger and more systemic. Whether you are managing a single storefront with 30 washing machines or a portfolio of 300 premium preschools, if your fixed costs are rigid, your liabilities are misaligned, and your margins are vulnerable to external utility spikes, you are not building wealth. You are simply managing a countdown timer. True financial intelligence is the ability to recognize these structural vulnerabilities before you commit your capital. It is understanding that a business with 90% gross margins can still easily go bankrupt if its net interest margin is negative and its operational friction is high. David learned this lesson the hard way, but it allowed him to completely re-engineer his approach to capital allocation. So, how did David rescue his capital, pivot his strategy, and transform from a struggling operator into a true asset owner? To survive the meat grinder of physical operations, David had to stop thinking like a retail manager and start acting like a sophisticated asset owner. The first major shift occurred in how he structured his lease agreements. In his initial urban venture, David was crushed by a rigid triple net structure. To protect his capital, he renegotiated his leases using a method known as natural breakpoint percentage rent. Instead of agreeing to a flat, sky-high base rent of $120 per square foot, David negotiated a significantly lower minimum base rent of $30 per square foot. In exchange, the landlord received a percentage of his gross sales, typically around 5 to 8%, but only after the business crossed a specific revenue threshold called the breakpoint. If utility prices spiked, or if seasonal weather caused a temporary dip in machine occupancy, David was no longer forced to pay a massive fixed rent. His primary overhead cost became variable, scaling directly with its actual cash receipts. This simple contractual restructuring effectively shifted a massive portion of the operational risk back onto the commercial real estate owner. Next, David conducted a complete financial autopsy on his capital stack. He realized that funding short-term, rapidly depreciating industrial washers and dryers with floating-rate debt was a mathematical trap. He immediately began paying down his high-interest small business administration loans using his remaining cash reserves, systematically reducing his debt service obligations. By lowering his overall leverage, he protected the business against macroeconomic interest rate shocks and minimized his fixed cost rigidity. Instead of reinvesting every dollar of profit into buying more machines or expanding into unvetted locations, he built a dedicated capital preservation fund. This reserve was parked in low-risk, highly liquid cash equivalents, ensuring that even if energy costs rose or a major water main broke, the business had the liquid runway to survive for months without taking on predatory merchant cash advances. He minimized transaction fee erosion by introducing hybrid card readers that charged a small, flat technology fee to the consumer for cashless transactions, completely offsetting the destructive swipe fees that had previously eaten into his bottom line. This is the true value of financial forensics. It is the transition from working for a cash flow stream to engineering the system that protects it. It is the realization that a successful enterprise is not built on flashy revenue numbers, but on the defense of your net interest margin and the absolute elimination of operational friction. By changing how he structured his liabilities, David did not just save his business, he mastered the invisible rules of wealth. Whether you are looking at a corner laundromat, a franchise system, or a multi-billion-dollar commercial real estate portfolio, the rules of the financial game never change. True wealth preservation and capital growth do not come from chasing flashy revenue projections or falling for idealized hands-off passive income models. It comes from having the financial forensic intelligence to look past the storefront, to read the fine print of every lease agreement, and to understand exactly how macro forces impact your micro cash flows. Every investment is a machine, and you must understand its plumbing before you buy.